Welcome to The Trap, a deep dive into Sir James Goldsmith's powerful critique of modern society. In this video, we'll explore the core arguments from his influential book, beginning with the dilemmas facing our world today. Goldsmith's journey starts with a simple question: are we truly measuring what matters, or are we just counting numbers? As we move through his insights, you'll see how he challenges the conventional wisdom that economic growth and technological advancement are the ultimate goals. Instead, he asks us to consider the real purpose behind our progress. Let's begin by understanding the roots of our societal challenges. Goldsmith opens with a fundamental critique. Modern societies often confuse measurement with understanding. He argues that science, technology, and the economy have become ends in themselves, rather than tools to enhance well-being. This inversion of values, he believes, is at the heart of many social crises. While economic growth and prosperity are important, Goldsmith warns against using them as the sole measures of national success. He points to the United States and Great Britain, nations with impressive economic records but deep social problems, as examples of how material wealth does not guarantee societal health. Goldsmith challenges the reliance on gross national product, GNP, as the primary indicator of prosperity. He explains that GNP only measures activity, not well-being. For instance, disasters like hurricanes or epidemics can increase GNP due to the economic activity required for recovery, but these events do not improve quality of life. Similarly, rising crime rates or health crises contribute to GNP through increased spending, yet they reflect societal problems. Goldsmith's point is clear: focusing solely on GNP leads to policies that may undermine social stability and well-being. Relying on economic statistics alone can lead to misleading conclusions. Goldsmith uses the example of two mothers who care for their families at home. This work isn't counted in GNP, but if they start paying each other for childcare, suddenly their activities are recognized economically. The same applies to farmers who shift from subsistence to market-oriented agriculture. By monetizing informal economies, societies may disrupt traditional relationships and community bonds, all in the name of economic growth. Goldsmith warns that this approach can destabilize families and local communities. Goldsmith criticizes the Western tendency to export its economic and social model worldwide, believing it to be universally valid. He argues that this has led to the spread of social problems such as crime, drugs, family breakdown, and environmental degradation. These issues, he says, are not inevitable byproducts of development, but symptoms of a flawed approach. By imposing this model on other societies, the West has destabilized cultures and ignored the importance of social stability in favor of rapid economic growth. Goldsmith acknowledges that economic growth is necessary, but only as a means to serve society's needs. The economy should be a tool, not a master. He plans to illustrate how poorly conceived economic policies like global free trade, intensive agriculture, and nuclear energy have undermined social stability. These examples, he suggests, are products of Enlightenment thinking that prioritize efficiency and growth over human well-being. Goldsmith's critique sets the stage for a deeper examination of these modern economic tools. Most national leaders, Goldsmith observes, have fallen into the trap of prioritizing measurement over understanding. He cites France's impressive GNP growth alongside a dramatic rise in unemployment, and the UK's economic expansion paired with increased poverty. These contradictions reveal the limitations of focusing solely on economic indicators. Goldsmith's encounters with leaders in Anguilla, Vietnam, and Bhutan show that alternative approaches, prioritizing contentment and social cohesion, are possible, though rare. Goldsmith turns his attention to global free trade, which he describes as a modern economic dogma. The goal of global free trade, promoted by GATT, is to create a worldwide market for products, services, capital, and labor. Goldsmith believes that this theory is deeply flawed and, if implemented, will impoverish and destabilize both the industrialized and developing worlds. He challenges the economic theories of specialization and comparative advantage, arguing that they no longer apply in today's interconnected world. With billions of people from countries like China, India, and Vietnam entering the global economy, labor markets have changed dramatically. Goldsmith explains that workers in developed countries now compete directly with those in low-wage nations. Companies can save enormous amounts by moving production offshore, increasing profits but eliminating domestic jobs. This race to the bottom, he argues, is a fundamental flaw in global free trade policies, as it undermines the economic security of workers in developed nations. Some argue that high-tech industries will create new jobs to replace those lost to offshoring. Goldsmith disagrees, pointing out that high-tech sectors are highly automated and employ relatively few people. Even when these industries grow, they cannot absorb the vast numbers of workers displaced from traditional manufacturing. As companies like IBM, and Boeing move production to low-cost countries, the promise of high-tech job creation rings hollow. The result is a net loss of employment in developed economies. Goldsmith highlights a critical imbalance. While developed countries may balance trade in monetary terms, they lose far more jobs than they gain. High-tech exports require few workers, while imports from low-wage countries support tens of thousands of jobs abroad. This means that developed nations are effectively exporting jobs and importing unemployment. The focus on monetary balance ignores the deeper social costs of this shift. Even the service sector is not immune to global labor shifts. Advances in communication technology allow companies to move back-office operations to countries like India, where labor is cheaper. While some services, such as health and education, must remain local, Goldsmith warns that a nation cannot sustain its economy by only dispensing wealth. It must also produce it. The erosion of the productive sector threatens the foundation of social services. Goldsmith explains how exchange rates can dramatically alter countries' comparative advantage. Fluctuations in currency values can make industries suddenly uncompetitive, forcing them to close or relocate. This instability undermines the logic of specialization and free trade, as industries cannot be expected to move in and out of existence based on short-term monetary shifts. Goldsmith calls this approach nonsensical and damaging to long-term economic health. Opponents of global free trade often claim that consumers benefit from cheaper imported goods. Goldsmith counters that while prices may drop, the real cost is lost jobs, lower wages, and higher taxes to support the unemployed. He notes that companies like Nike increased profits by moving production offshore, but consumers didn't see significant price reductions. The social and economic costs, he argues, outweigh the benefits of cheaper products. Goldsmith points to data showing that real wages in developed countries have declined as global labor markets expand. With billions of new workers entering the market, the value of labor drops and unions lose bargaining power. Employers can easily threaten to move jobs offshore if workers demand better conditions. This shift in the balance between capital and labor deepens social divisions and weakens the fabric of society. To global free trade, Goldsmith argues, the winners are those who can exploit cheap labor, transnational corporations and investors. The losers are workers in developed countries who lose their jobs or see their earnings fall. He warns that this dynamic is unsustainable, comparing it to winning a poker game on the Titanic. The social wounds inflicted by these policies, he says, will have brutal consequences for societies worldwide. Transnational corporations now account for a significant share of global output and sales. Goldsmith notes that these corporations have the power to move production anywhere, seeking the lowest labor costs. Their interests often diverge from those of the societies in which they operate, leading to a disconnect between economic activity and social well-being. This globalization of production, he warns, threatens the cohesion of nations. Goldsmith is critical of the World Trade Organization, WTO, which he sees as an unelected bureaucracy with significant power over national economies. With each nation having only one vote among many, real control is lost. Goldsmith fears that this structure undermines national sovereignty and places economic decisions in the hands of distant officials, unaccountable to the people most affected by their policies. Some argue that developed nations have a moral duty to open their markets to the developing world. Goldsmith responds by citing studies showing that unregulated trade leads to a downward leveling of wages, harming workers in richer countries without significantly improving conditions for the poor in developing nations. He also warns that intensive agriculture, promoted by global free trade, forces millions off the land and into urban slums, destabilizing societies and fueling mass migration. Goldsmith distinguishes between the ruling elites in developing countries who benefit from global free trade and the general population who often suffer. He cites protests in India and the Philippines against policies that threaten rural communities and traditional ways of life. For many, global free trade represents a form of recolonization, destroying cultural diversity and social stability in the name of economic efficiency. As an alternative, Goldsmith advocates for regional free trade areas among countries with similar levels of development and wage structures. These regions could negotiate mutually beneficial agreements with others, encouraging local production and employment. He believes this approach would foster prosperity and stability without the destructive side effects of global free trade. Capital and technology would still flow, but in ways that support local economies. Goldsmith acknowledges that developed countries face internal challenges such as high social costs, taxation, and inflexible labor markets. However, he insists that even if these issues are addressed, they will not solve the deeper problems created by global free trade. The scale of integrating billions of new workers into the global economy is unprecedented, and the consequences cannot be managed by traditional reforms alone. Goldsmith rejects the idea of extreme economic specialization, arguing that a healthy economy requires a diverse base of small and medium-sized businesses. Specialization may increase profits for large corporations, but it reduces employment and undermines social participation. A strong society, he says, is built like a pyramid, with a broad foundation of diverse enterprises supporting stability and inclusion. Britain's historical commitment to free trade originated in the 19th century, when cheap food imports supported industrial growth. Today, the situation is reversed. Agriculture employs few, unemployment is high, and trade deficits persist. Goldsmith argues that the old logic no longer applies, and that British policymakers must reassess their economic doctrines in light of current realities. The purpose of the economy, he reminds us, is to serve society, not the other way around. Goldsmith, stability does not mean resisting change, but managing it without social breakdown. A stable society can adapt to necessary economic shifts while preserving its core values and cohesion. Responsible growth should enhance, not undermine, the foundations of community life. Goldsmith's vision is for an economy that supports prosperity with stability, rather than sacrificing social health for short-term gains. Goldsmith distinguishes between nations, artificial states, and populated spaces. Many modern conflicts, he argues, arise from the desire of real nations to free themselves from artificial states created by colonial powers. These artificial states often group together diverse peoples without shared culture or identity, leading to instability and conflict. Goldsmith's analysis extends from Europe to Africa, highlighting the long-term consequences of ignoring national identities. Goldsmith warns that forced integration of diverse groups can lead to hostility and conflict. Nations can absorb newcomers, but only gradually and with respect for the host culture. Overwhelming immigration or the imposition of foreign values can destabilize societies. Goldsmith's message is that successful integration requires honoring the traditions and identities of both newcomers and established communities. Goldsmith criticizes the Western belief in a universal model of society. He argues that attempts to impose Western values and systems on other cultures amount to cultural imperialism. This approach, he says, ignores the diversity of human experience and often leads to resistance, resentment, and instability. True progress, in Goldsmith's view, respects the unique paths of different societies. Goldsmith examines the evolution of American identity, from a nation of European immigrants to a diverse, multi-ethnic society. He discusses the challenges and opportunities of rapid demographic change, noting both the vitality brought by new arrivals and the social tensions that can result. Goldsmith cautions that too rapid or sweeping change can destabilize communities and that preserving shared understandings is essential for social harmony. Goldsmith critiques the European Union's move toward a centralized, homogenized state under the Maastricht Treaty. He argues that this approach threatens the unique identities of European nations and was constructed without genuine democratic debate. Goldsmith believes that the passion for national identity is strong and that attempts to erase it will ultimately fail. He calls for a Europe that respects its nations rather than forcing them into artificial unity.